Oh, this meeting's being recorded. All right. So I want to introduce to you Amy. Amy is our speaker for today, and she is an executive leadership development coach with over 20 years experience in corporate hiring from developing talent and executives. She brings experience from sales management to head of human resources. She currently has her own executive coaching company focused on developing new managers and emerging leaders as they navigate key career stages. She believes your greatest asset is you. Your only obstacle is your mindset. I think that we know that. So Amy's going to talk about how to get out of your mind and into you to tell everybody what you're really good at. So I'll turn it over to you, Amy. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Christine. And it really is amazing. I've looked at and spoke to Christine about all the amazing resources that you and your organization provide to support people in transition and interviewing and that whole process. So it's really fantastic what you guys can take advantage of. And I look forward to our time together today. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'll ask you to be engaged in the chat. If you have any questions as well, raise your hand. We will stop along the way. There's a lot of information to get to, but a little bit of a different perspective. So one thing to know about my approach, and this is what I do with my clients all the time, whether they're leaving an organization or in transition, getting promoted, but we really start with, I don't start with the resume, don't start with your LinkedIn profile or how to answer all the questions. So that will follow. We go right to the core and start with mindset. How are you showing up? So you know how you show up, you can break through blocks that are holding you back and really help you align with your true story and strengths so you can interview with confidence and connect for success. So that's why we're here, to gain clarity, build confidence, and really help you connect. And I mean connect your story to the role, connect in the interview process with the people you're working with, as well as networking. So it has lots of meaning here. And yes, as Christine said, I was in corporate for over 20 years in senior leadership positions, but the key theme for me was always developing talent, whether it was senior leaders going into senior positions, people coming into becoming a new manager and emerging leaders. And we even had a college development program, so a sales development program. So college kids coming right out of school, and we developed them into a sales program right into management. So the interview process is something I'm pretty familiar with, and I've also experienced myself. So I'm happy to answer and take questions at the end as well about some of the other experiences you're having that we may or may not have touched on today. So please feel free. So in the chat, just so I get an idea where everybody's at, let me know, are you at the beginning, middle, or end of your interview or transition process? The beginning being you're just starting to put your resume out, exploring roles and networking. Are you in the middle where you're interviewing, you're going through the process? Are you near the end? You're one of the top couple candidates and now you're awaiting, or you're in the process of offers and negotiations? Where are we at? Beginning? Good. Oh, good. We're going to get you right at the beginning and really change. All three. That's good too. The middle? Good. Great. Good. Middle, but resetting back to the beginning. Good. Well, after today, let's see, Nina, how we can reset and see how some of the things we can share with you today will help you really move forward. Okay. And here's my next question. In the chat, share one of the biggest challenges or fears that really comes up for you when you think of the interview process and finding a new role. What does that look like? A challenge, a fear, something that kind of gets in your way when you think about this process or in the process. Your mind talk. Thank you, Dorothy. What else?
Oh, she wants it in there. Overcoming nerves. No, it's not nerves.
Overcoming. Yep. Or just nerves. Imposter syndrome. Yep. Overqualified. Worry about lack of experience. Yep. Not being able to read minds of the specific interviewers. Oh, I love that you said that. Let's stop
I
trying
love
to.
that too, Amy. Oh my goodness, that
Yeah.
is so nerve-wracking.
Yeah, we're gonna learn to just not do that anymore. I have a great story on that one, and how it almost actually worked against them because he was trying so hard to answer what he thought they wanted to hear versus showing up with what they actually brought him in for, because he had a specialty, but he was going off of that and pivoted thinking he wanted them to hear something else. So that's fantastic. Transitioning from sales back to HR. Cool. I actually had sales management training and was put into HR. I'm like, H what? But I had a CEO who was very much about know the organization, know the people, and I'll surround you with the rest. I also was doing recruiting and training. So I had a little bit of it. And then I had an amazing employment lawyer who taught me the rest of HR. If you're overqualified, you're fully qualified and ready to take on a new role. Yep. Out of work too long. Okay. But there's experiences there. So we're going to find them. Worried about weak points I have. Okay. And what are the strengths? And what are they really weak points depending on the role you're looking for? So we'll talk about that and changing careers. These are beautiful. Thank you everyone for sharing. So let's get started, because today what we're going to focus on is your mindset for success. And when I talk about these three things, this is the most important: building clarity, which will build your confidence and help you connect. So when you think of clarity, and I have a little scale here from 1 to 10, clarity being, where do you think you are on this scale? 10 being, I'm doing great. 1 being, I need some help on this. When you think of clarity, how clear are you today on understanding the value you bring, these fears and things that you think are holding you back, and your ability to work through them? And how do you see opportunities? Clear on seeing all those possibilities around you. So 1 to 10, where are you today, or at least the beginning of this presentation on clarity? 5. Okay, what else? 5, thank you. So right in the middle, right? So we know there's some work to do. 5, 6, we got an 8, good. We got an 8, that's great. 6, 7, good, good. This is great, thank you. Now let's look at confidence. When you think of confidence, understanding your strengths, how to really present them, having that strong, detailed story, and I do bring self-care into that, right? How good you feel when you're, out there interviewing. Rate yourself on that, 1 to 10. All right, we got a 10, 9, excellent. Oh, I'm so glad about that. 6, 9, 8, good. My self-confidence is a shaky 6, but varies day to day. And that is energy right there. It varies day to day, right? It depends on these different influencers that come up, or the people we meet, or the conversation we have will absolutely adjust our energy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But once we're aware of it, we're now going to know what we can do about it and move it into action to really get it to work for us, not against us. So thank you for those answers.
No, Amy, I am so jealous of the people that said 8, 9, and 10.
Because
and
you
I'm
know
sure
what?
that the 5s are thinking the same thing. Like, wow, I wish I had that confidence.
You know what? And I'm sure there's 1 or 2 things you'll get out of today that will help move that number. But look, even me, I mean, I'll have a day where, one day it's a 10 because of the room I'm in, or the people I'm around, and who's surrounding me, and what we're doing, and we're in flow. So you feel great, you can do anything. And then another day, something will just like shut you down, or that talk in our head. And that's what we're going to work on. We're going to work on the triggers, right? And when those get in our way, how do we just stop them? Because once you're aware of what we talked about today, you can really manage this all on your own. And, there's deep work that we can do too. That's a whole nother thing, but we're going to give you enough tools today to get going, and really definitely can change even 1 or 2 points on this. And then let's talk about connection, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how easily can you connect your story with the roles you're looking for? How comfortable are you connecting with the interviewers and recruiters, and even networking? Where's your connection number, 1 to 10? Put that in the chat for me. 6 to 7, good.
Does that connection number, Amy, have something to do with your confidence and clarity? So could it change depending on the situation, whether you are interviewing or talking about a job or connecting to a new networking partner or job search group.
It's connection has a lot of different meanings. So
Okay.
I mentioned it being like, yes, it's how do you feel you connect the story? So connecting your dots to, and we'll talk about that because we're going to talk about story and how does that align with the role and the job descriptions you're looking at, and how do you make some of those connections? We're going to talk about that two-way conversation in the meeting with recruiters or with, the people you're interviewing with, because it is a two-way conversation. And you will hear me say my favorite line that one of my clients uses now, and she like writes it down before she went into, she uses it for meetings now. You all, I'm sure, are great at having conversations. For some reason, when we think of interviews, we're like, we get, we hesitate, we pause, we overthink it, we'll get into all of that. But it's just a conversation. It's just a conversation. Just have one, right? It's two-way, and we're going to talk more about that as well. But that's my thing. It's just a conversation, and it seems so simple, and I don't mean to minimize the experience, but when you realize, oh yeah, I know how to do that, I can have a conversation, you get back to being authentically you and really getting into that mode. So that's what
I think that's a wonderful point, Amy. When I tell everyone, you have to be a human thesaurus, because there's so many words for the exact same thing. And when you rephrase it to say it's just a conversation, right there, I think is a boost in confidence, because you know you. And I love that.
And I want you to do you, right? We
Yeah.
want to be, look, we want to be authentic, because if you show up differently when you're interviewing and then you get the job and go in and it's something's not aligned and it's not right because you were trying to be something different and now it's not, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, right? You're interviewing them, the different people, the team, the organization, the environment. So keep that in mind. Okay. So thank you for all your engagement. This is great. We know where everybody's at, and just keep your numbers handy, either on the worksheet that we gave you, and just see, okay, when we're done at the end of the session, we'll come back and be like, what do we think that helped us move? Or what's one thing we can do, takeaway, to move that number just up 1 or 2 more points, right? Because that'll make a difference for you going forward. So let's start with clarity. What's important here is starting from within, because when we strengthen our core thoughts, we can break through blocks, those stories that are holding us back, and we can begin to understand and connect with our value and truly see opportunities and possibilities around us. So the clarity piece, this is where it starts. It all starts with you. All right. And like Christine mentioned at the top, I truly believe your greatest asset is you. Sorry, I'm moving the chat box. Your greatest asset is you, and your only obstacle is your mindset. So what we're doing here, and I'll be sharing a lot about energy leadership, and this is a foundation of it, is everything starts with your thoughts, right here where the star is. Because your thoughts generate how you feel, which then creates how you act and the impact you have. So I usually ask people, so what are you focused on right now? Is it getting your resume done, updating your LinkedIn profile, scouring sites for different jobs, applying? These are all actions, right? They're all actions that we're involved with. They're all part of the process, and they're all really important. All I'm going to ask for you to do today in the couple hours we're together is we're going to pause the actions for a moment. Because if you're feeling where your numbers were in the 5, 6, 7, right, and clarity or confidence and the ability to connect, and we're out here doing these actions feeling like that, right, not necessarily at our optimal level, how is that landing for us, right? How much better can we just move the dial a little bit to make a difference in how we're thinking about the interviews, how we're thinking about connecting the job, how we're thinking about our story, and then feeling more confident about it. So when we show up in such a different way, right? And really are connecting. And there's a lot that goes into the neuroscience of all this as well. So we're really talking about what's happening with getting to the point of our prefrontal cortex, which is where we connect with people, where we have executive function, we have ideas, we're creative, we're connecting, and we can really find our way. Trust is there. We're building relationships, versus when we get caught up in those stories in our mind, that becomes something from what they call an amygdala hijack. This little part in the back of your brain that's there protecting you, right? The fight, flight, freeze, or appease. Now that's what's happening. And that's how we're going out like that, as making these actions and interacting with people. We're not going to come off as our best. So we're going to shift back to our thoughts. And this is where we're going to work, because this is where your power is. This will be your game changer, as I share with you some of the concepts from energy leadership. Oops, I'm not moving. Hold on one second. Okay, so here's some things we want to talk about, right? Mindset is, I want to know how mindset is actually working for you or against you. Do you find yourself on the left second guessing or overanalyzing, right? How often during that interview process do you find yourself second guessing yourself, your qualifications someone had mentioned earlier, your right fit for the role? Are we comparing or intimidated, right? So how often are we overanalyzing the details, where we also get into this analysis paralysis? And then how are we acting when we show up? Do you find yourself comparing to other candidates or getting intimidated by them, thinking they have perceived better experience than you, right? Those are just stories in our head, because you really don't know. Because I was sitting on that side doing tons of interviews. I don't always know exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for what was special, unique, cool that you could bring that meet the requirements, but also what else did you have that was interesting, right? So trying to figure out or answer what I was thinking, I didn't always know what I was thinking. So there's really not a right answer there. So don't overthink that. And don't compare to other people. I had someone tell me that they were at an interview, and they were younger. It was a college student, but he was surprised he was doing a panel interview in front of another panel. And if he would listen to the questions and the way all the other people on the panel answered. So he was like, oh, wow, I'm never going to get this internship because that person has more experience than me. They've done this before. Well, you don't know what the panel was looking for. The panel may have been saying, well, that person has so much experience. This role is really X. So I'm looking for somebody who has this kind of background and just starting. So he actually could have been ideal, but he was shutting down because in his head, he was comparing and he got intimidated. And he started to shut, like he was checking out because he figured they already would pick somebody else. So be careful of that. How about self-doubt? Are you doubting yourself when you read the job description, thinking I'm overqualified? Or am I qualified enough? Or am I too old or too young? Or I don't have this experience? All those, this is all normal because we're now walking into a different, working into new roles, different companies, maybe different industries. We may not be fully versed in it, but I know, and I am pretty sure everyone on this call has special experience, background, knowledge, expertise that when we put together properly in the right story and really dive into our strengths and how to explain them, you have great qualities that you bring to the table. Now it's just finding the role where it really fits well, whether it's a lot of experience or something new and you're willing to try something new or learn it, but you bring X, that's great too. It's just how do we build your story? And of course, are some of those other thoughts working against you? The stress, stress or pressure to find the perfect job in a short amount of time. So you skip the prep and then you're winging it on the interview, not going to be helpful. We need to find power in the pause for you to reset and re-energize to make sure you show up as best as you can. So we'll talk about that as well. And are you worried that you don't have the right contacts or connection at companies to get the interviews? I've heard that 3 times in the last 2 weeks from some of my clients. And I'm like, listen, right? There's a way you can use LinkedIn. There's a way to go talk and interact with your network. Look at all the people on the call today, right? There is a network here. You're all not going after the same job. And guess what? Even if you are, you have different experiences you bring to it. Talk to each other, share when you know of jobs or you know of somebody on this call, or pair up with someone. You'll hear me talk about that in a little bit. You guys have an amazing group here. I had been part of a senior leadership team when I left corporate that was in transition with a big outplacement company. And when I decided to leave, I made sure that was part of it. And it was really interesting the people were all heads of HR, but we had something a little different that we offered. And some of us were actually applying for the same roles, but we were sharing everything we were learning about the experience, the recruiters, the pay, everything they were looking for, and then sharing all different types of resources. So we've changed your mindset to work for you. How does it feel, right? All that stuff we just talked about drains you. But how does it feel when you say to yourself, I am confident and prepared. I have experience. I am qualified, and I know I add value. I can see these opportunities and possibilities here. And maybe you're going to an interview and right along the way, you're like, this is not for me. Okay, that's great. Can you pivot enough to have a great conversation? Can you share some of your experience with the person you're interviewing with, something that may help them? Can you even say, you know what? Be confident. This may not be the right thing for me, but I know somebody who would be great for you. Happy to, recommend them. And on the other side, they may be like, wow, that's awesome. And you know what? I love your experience. And then out of nowhere, they're like, I heard about this, or our other department has this. You may be a better fit here. Again, two-way conversation, share, network, find and look for opportunities and possibilities. But you have to have the energy to have your eyes wide open. If you're blocked, this is what happens. You can't see in front of you. And how is your mindset working for you when you get really excited to learn a new skill, or excited to meet new people, and really excited to share your story? See the difference in the feeling? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Any questions so far? How are we doing? Good? Okay. All right. So this is my favorite, energy leadership. This is a success framework I use. It is at the intersection of understanding these 7 levels of your energy that you have to choose from, and your mindset at each level. And with this new learning and awareness, you will be able to begin to master your mindset to help you build this clarity, confidence, and connection that we talk about. This is from IPEC, the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching, of which I'm a certified professional coach of energy leadership and core leadership dynamics. Is designed by Bruce D. Schneider, actually down in New Jersey. And it's the first thing I work with clients on. It sets their whole foundation for them to build their personal and professional success. Now, when we talk about energy leadership, we define leadership not only as the leader of a company, the CEO. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is your ability to inspire yourself and others in a positive direction. So it's how we are showing up in a moment of intersection with someone, which is exactly what's happening when we're interviewing or networking, right? You do lead yourself, and you can lead others at different moments. So we're going to focus on the way you lead yourself. And the biggest takeaway here is at every moment, you have the power to choose how you want to show up. So understanding the energy and that you have the ability to shift it to work for you, it will be your most powerful tool. So when we talk about energy, what are we talking about? Energy is something that runs through us in all our senses. It's how we connect. It's the feeling we give and we get when we interact with others. It's what helps us connect and engage with others, or protect and retreat. And energy doesn't go away. It simply changes its form. So it rolls up and down this chart that you see here, this framework. And we're not trying to be just one energy. We're not like, get me to 5. I got to be 5 all day. This is like the stock market or a roller coaster, right? There's different things that can happen throughout the day that may drop your energy, that you may be stressed or get triggered from. And that's okay. And even at the lower levels, which are negative catabolic energy we'll talk about, they are there to protect you. It's just how long do you stay there where it doesn't shut you down? Because that's not going to help you in the interview process, right? Or while you're transitioning. And yes, let's just put out there the big elephant in the room. There is so much going on in our world today, right? With COVID and work from home and kids in school, and more than even the normal regular situation that you would be facing. But this is something that will apply not even just to your work life, but it will also apply in your family life. So let's get into this. And as we set up at the front, energy attracts like energy, right? So think about when I was describing those mindsets that work against you, right? Self-doubt, second guessing, fear, stress. How did those make you feel? Right? In the chat, tell me how those words just generally make you feel and the thought of them.
think they have a negative connotation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
They
very
do.
hard to hear those words and feel any positivity for anything.
Exactly. And what happens when we feel like that, start to think about it in your mind. If you're feeling like that, yep, it takes away your energy. It takes away your, yep, it's counterproductive. You get anxious. Exactly. And that is a physical feeling that you're talking about, right? And if that goes on for too long, it will have effects on you. High stress, we know, is not good for everything, right? And that can really shut you down. Now think of when I was talking about those I am mindset statements. I am confident. I am qualified. I do add value. They're very powerful, right? How do those make you feel? Because that's anabolic energy. So we talk about catabolic, which is negative, the lower level, and anabolic is the higher level of energy that's rejuvenating, it's expansive, it's where growth comes from. And it gives you that ability to get in flow and connect with people and see opportunity. And you're right, Loretta, if you have negative energy, or how about this? How about you go in with positive energy and the interviewer has negative energy? You're now going to recognize it because of what we go through. You're going to actually recognize and you're going to be like, whoa, they're so level 2 right now. Right? And what can I do? So all I want to tell you is, just like I said up front, at any moment, you have the opportunity to choose how you want to show up. You can either get sucked into that and let it drop you and drop your energy, or you can, what you say next may actually help them, right? It may change the conversation. It's like walking into a room of a meeting and it's all this negative energy. You either get sucked into it or you're like, okay, time out. You know, and either you say something funny or you help change the direction of the meeting, but you have the ability to do that. Okay. So I want to make sure you really can start to feel what the energy is, because I want you to remember what it is when you can refer back to something that you've actually felt. So now take out, if you have the worksheet, it looks just like this, or on a piece of paper, just have these columns. And I want you to think of 2 experiences. The first one we're going to talk about is, think of a positive experience when you were really inspired, connecting and in flow, either a work experience or during a great interview you were on. And so in the thoughts box, describe that experience that you remember that was really fantastic. And then under the feelings, describe how it made you feel because it was going so well. And then under the actions, because you felt so great, how were you then able to show up and perform? What were you able to accomplish because of the way you were feeling in flow or connected? And if you don't have the form, just have a piece of paper, because you'll get it when Christine sends out that PDF. It was in the initial attachment with the Zoom link. But you can just scribble some notes on this. So anyone want to share a positive experience they had? That they remember? And how it really made an impact? Come on, who's going to be my friend?
Hello, can you hear me?
Who's
Yes.
that?
Oh,
Hi,
all
Mary
right.
Jane.
Well, hi. Okay. So, all right. I don't know if this is going to be relevant. So I went on an interview yesterday.
Mhm.
Okay. It was a phone interview. So the first thing the interviewer, when she got on, I said, "Hi, how are you today?" You know, she asked me, and I go, "How are you? How are you in the snowstorm?" Because I know she was from New Jersey. So we started talking about the snow and shoveling and all of that. And because of that energy I had of kind of doing a connection with New Jersey and our snowstorm, the interview went very like smooth. It went
Nice.
very positive because I kind of had a relationship of explaining something that we both could connect to with an outside environment. I don't know. I don't know if this has anything to do with what we're
It
doing.
does, but
it-
honestly,
yeah.
Mary Jane, it's how did it feel for you? You
Well,
felt
it
it, right?
felt.
Tell me what you were feeling when it was going so
I'll
well.
tell you. I felt like I knew her. like, I felt like she wasn't a person interviewing me. I felt like I was speaking to a friend.
You were having a
Explaining my-
conversation.
Conversation.
Exactly.
Just a conversation, right?
Yes, I was having a conversation. I was explaining what I did at my former job. I explained the value that I could bring to the new job that she was discussing, that there's a possibility, I'm a
Yeah.
candidate for.
Yeah.
So it was all positive because of that first, like, how are you today? Plus, before that, we had an interview Friday that she forgot about. She forgot about it. And I reminded her in an email. She goes, oh my God, I was inundated with work. So I knew that, wow, this is not bad. She can make a mistake too. People could fail a little, like forgot something.
Sure.
So, and she was so happy I reminded her. So anyway, so back to the feelings and thoughts, the actions. I was positive at the interview. It was a conversation.
You sounded
I didn't
confident.
feel anything. I felt very
Yeah.
confident. I related to her with what I could bring to the table over there. So that was it. I don't know. So
It's not even that was it. That was fantastic. No matter what, you were just present. You were connected. It sounded like you found a way to get into a great conversation, which then made you feel more comfortable
yes.
because it was just flowing. And that's really that's what you're looking for. So don't forget that, right? Don't forget that feeling, and remember what were the actions that you took that remind you of that. That's why I wanted you all to think about an experience for yourself, because it's easier than me just saying, oh, this is how it worked for someone else. When you can really connect with remembering a really awesome experience, you can bring that back and recall that on your next interview. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Okay.
I
Anybody
have
else wanna
one.
share
Thank you.
one? Sure.
I
Is
have
that
one.
Beth? Mhm.
Yes,
That's
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. This is great. First, I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Also, I had an interview last week, face to face. I'm in the healthcare industry. I'm a marketer, and I normally deal with home care agencies, and I go out and I represent the company. I've had quite a lot of those jobs, but anyway, moving forward, I had a face to face. It was for a facility and they were looking for a marketer. I went in, I have a lot of confidence in myself with the interview process. I know how to speak to them. I know what I'm doing. I made them laugh. They said they remembered me, stuff like that. But I'll be honest, I wasn't interested in the position. I didn't say that, but not that they were hiring me, but I made it clear to them that afterwards, I sent them a small thank you, but I mentioned to them that I was made another offer. I didn't want to say I wasn't interested, because how do you say, I'm sorry, I'm not interested? I mean, these are tough times, but I really wasn't. I didn't feel the facility. Yeah, I didn't feel the facility was clean enough. And if I'm going to put my name out there and do all my networking, I don't want to represent something that I know I wouldn't put my own mother in. And that's how I felt. But I felt very good in the interview process.
And you're very
I love that,
confident. It
Beth. You
sounds-
have
yeah.
a line that you won't cross that line. And it's very important to know what you will and won't do.
Right.
When we go back to that clarify statement that Amy talked about way back when, you know where your line is. And I think that's awesome, what you will and won't do.
So that's your deal breaker.
Yeah.
Yes, but I need a job,
Yeah, but
and
that's okay. But so guess what? But I need a job, right? Here comes that talk. Here comes that little, here comes that energy. That's what drops. That was a great example to show everyone. It was blah, 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 but then I need a job, right? So see where the energy starts to shift.
Well, right, because it's not like I'm able to be, I can really be that picky. But again, when it comes to me representing a company, if I'm going to be out there and this is my
that's
name,
your deal breaker. Okay, but there's your confidence. And you know what? And you probably, like I was saying earlier up front, and thank you for sharing that. You knew in the middle of the interview, not going to work for me, but you were still professional and you did your thing. You maybe can recommend somebody else who may be interested. And just because you showed up great, they may even refer you to somebody else or whatever, reach out to you. You just never know. So
you don't.
You were present, you were at high level, you were sharing, you know, which was great. And you were just having the experience, which is what
Right.
we'll get into when we talk about the different energy levels and what they look like. Thank you. That
Amy,
was
I
great.
know
Thank you.
that, you know, energy level could be on both sides of the table when we're interviewing,
Mhm.
but sometimes we'll see a job description that sounds perfect and apply, and then get to the interview like Beth, and you're like, wait a minute, you're talking about terms that or situations that are not even in the job description. So what you really want is not what you're putting out there. So we tend to take it personally as an interviewer when it's really not our fault.
Oh yeah, look,
Mm.
they're putting out the things they think they need. It sounds like when you got there, that I don't know, maybe the job description was there, but the facility you weren't so keen on, right? With the
Position,
way,
yeah.
yeah, that's a little different.
Yeah.
But there's definitely where, you know, sometimes they'll even put a statement, a bullet point on job descriptions and other things as
And
needed,
everything
right?
else.
And everything else. That's kind of our buffer. Like, we're still growing, and I know there's more stuff that'll come into it. I just don't know what to call it today. Sorry, that's what it is. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, Beth. And
You're
then,
welcome. Thank you.
so think about those experiences and what did you do and how did you feel? Like, what were your strengths you were using that really just kept you in flow? And it sounded like in both those situations, think about this, you were present. You were actually just experiencing in the moment, present. You weren't worrying about something in the past. Oh my God, this is just like that, right? That's that voice in our head. And you weren't worrying about, oh, what if I get this? What if I don't? Like, they need to do this. You weren't out here. You were just present and you were able to connect and get into a flow. Now let's think of a challenging experience, because we do want to remember, we don't want to get this feeling, but we want to remember what it feels like. What was a challenging experience you had, whether it was at work or during an interview, or a negative experience? What, you know, describe the situation in the thoughts box, and then describe how it made you feel. And because of that, how did you end up showing up? How did you act? So take a moment and write that down. And then who would like to share when you have an idea? Nina? Yeah?
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So I had a challenging experience most recently with an interview where I found out that it was between myself and one other gentleman to get the spot to head a group. The challenging experience for me ended up being that because I had a garden leave where I couldn't share client names from my former employer, I couldn't provide 2 to 4 potential deals that they could close sooner than later, and the other gentleman could. That made me feel inferior, right? Not necessarily that there was any other way that I could get the job. It automatically made me feel that the interview was over and there was nothing that I could do. The action that I chose to take was to go and use my personality and try to overwhelm them, if you will, with just other types of positive things, all around experiences that I could provide and another way I could tackle their end goal. The impact was, of course, I didn't get the job. I wouldn't be here today. But I ended up not only being second, but they said that they would keep my name on a hot list, because outside of the fact that they needed to close 2 organic deals by March 31st, and I couldn't provide that, they said I was the chosen candidate.
So what did you learn from that experience?
I just honestly, being my authentic self, I felt good about the interview itself and the many rounds that I went through all the way up to the global CFO. What I didn't particularly feel was just how to get over that, you know, disappointment for making it so far and not getting it. The other disappointment for me was there should have been other things that they should have been looking at, like longer term goals, not just the immediate need. Like, should be a mixture of the two.
Okay. When you look back at the company, right? And obviously you had this parameter, right, with the garden leave and things you can't, share or do. So
Correct.
there was something a little outside of who you were and how you're showing up, right? As they basically told you. Right? Otherwise, it would, if there wasn't that, then it was a different story. Is that true?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else could that mean, possibly? How did you like the company in general?
I thought the company was great.
Okay.
I liked the way that they were handling things given the pandemic. They
Yeah.
technically have their own building near King of Prussia Mall.
Okay.
And they were already working it more like a WeWork, where they were renting out the space
Mhm.
for nearby companies that needed to have people to go in. And they were considering a permanent work from home process with occasional, sign up and go to a conference room type setting going forward. I like the fact that they were there for their customers, the entrepreneurs or middle companies. And it seemed like a nice fit, a nice home, good
Okay.
culture, good people.
And
Yada,
there's
yada,
still an
yada.
opportunity for you, possibly, but down the line.
They would need to create another position. Yeah, all
Okay.
this other stuff would have to happen
Okay.
after we get out of the pandemic. But yeah, in
Okay.
the foreseeable near future, not so much.
Okay. But there is this other thing, right? The garden leave piece that kind of just came up. If you were the hiring manager and had that candidate and knew the garden leave, what would you have done?
Well, for me, now that the garden leave is over,
Ah,
I would first have asked the person how long was it for, which
okay.
was a question that never came up.
Okay, there you go.
I
Yep.
would try to have found a way, again, to get the subject matter expertise from the candidate with respect to that, NDA, with respect to the
Yes.
confidentiality that needs to be in place. There are other
Okay.
ways you could have spun it, I thought.
There are. So now that you look at it from their lens, right, on the other side, which is, thank you for doing that with me. What would you do just different going forward in your next set of interviews? Well, now that garden leave is done. Yeah. But even if you had it again, right? Like, is that something that would come up maybe beforehand, discussed, so you had the opportunity, or is that what is the key learning you took from that challenging experience? That's what I'm asking.
I think I just have to present myself differently.
Okay.
Yes, that situation could come up again. No, I'm not a fan of saying I have all these clients on my back pocket, because you're not guaranteed, given the environment we're in, that client will be available to enter into an arrangement with XYZ
But
new
do you
company.
have relationships?
You
Were
do.
they were looking for a Rolodex, basically? Sorry, my old fashioned term. They were
They
looking
are.
for.
No. I use the same terminology. Yes. I think at the end of the day,
Maybe
they
that
were
was the
looking.
problem. I shouldn't have used
It
that
was.
Rolodex.
Now that you pointed it out, yeah. At the end of the day, that's what they were
Yeah.
looking for, and that's not what I was able to provide, nor do I think I would have went in with that. I think after we've
Okay.
established certain relationships together, then I could have introduced them to others, but just to organically do that, I don't think that was the proper way to tackle it.
Okay, so when we start talking about story later on in the presentation, you have a story there, but it seems like you were holding part of it back from what I'm hearing, just by hearing this a little bit. And whether or not you can bring in, right, Beth, whether or not you share your contacts is a different story, right? But letting people know that you are fully entrenched in this area or this sector, and you have experience in it, and you have a wealth of contacts, whether the client will be interested in this product or not is something different, but sharing your depth of relationships is absolutely one of your key selling traits, or part of your story. Right? So this is what we're talking about, is when you talk about your story, if it's sales, yep, you're right. If this is a sales role, that's critical, right? That's the difference of probably what you said the other guy said. I can call that guy tomorrow. Well, maybe you could have called that guy in 3 weeks when your garden leave was over too. But is that part of the conversation? Are you making it part of your story? Okay.
Right. I didn't make it part of my story without taking up time. It wasn't a sales role.
Okay.
It was to head a group. Yeah.
Okay. Still knowing, the people, the industry, you've got those relationships as a key selling point for you going forward. Either way, it sounds like. Okay, so keep
Thank
that
you.
in mind when we talk about our story and putting our story together. And I love that we can, that's what this group is for, right? So I will say it again, find some people you can partner with that aren't your family, you know, that aren't your best friend, who won't necessarily see it, they know you. Talk about your story, talk about some of the challenges you had and what you experienced on an interview, and really look at your resume and listen to the story. And all the time, I'm updating resumes. I'm updating the story, because there's things like that that I just heard, that there's more there. But, you know, even in a higher level role, knowing those clients, having had relationships with them, sounds like that was important and can be for you. But it's also one of your assets. Use it. It doesn't mean you can bring them in tomorrow, but I know them. I've worked with them for 10 years or 5 years, right? So that's a benefit. Great. But see what the challenging experience did. And Loretta, thank you. You had a challenging experience that turned into creating your own small business.
Hi,
right?
how are you?
Yeah,
Good
tell me
morning.
about that. Good morning.
My challenging experience was that I went on an interview for a marketing position, and I'm a former teacher. I was a teacher for my whole career. And so I retired from teaching, and I went on a job interview that I thought I nailed. I thought it went very, very well, and I did not get the second call back. And my feelings for that were, I was discouraged and I was sad and I felt really down. Like, what did I do wrong? Why didn't this go well? Because I really thought I had it. So then I thought, okay, what can I learn from this? And I contacted a friend who was a headhunter for media. Because I thought, okay, this is the direction that I want to go in now. I want to go into that direction. And I had a really good conversation with him. And he told me, you are a sesame seed bagel. You're trying to become a cinnamon bagel. He goes, you're always going to be a sesame seed bagel. And I said, what are you trying to tell me? And he said, honestly, he goes, you're trying to become somebody and something that you're not. Play to your strengths. Be who you are. Don't be somebody else. So the impact of that is that I started my own tutoring company. I started my own little tutoring business. And during COVID, it took off because the parents were looking for people to tutor their children. And I've worked with people face to face, but I've also worked virtually. And it's been growing small in small little baby steps, but it's something that I started from the ground up. And it's something that I'm really proud of, and it's something that I'm still working on. So
you
that's,
married.
I took a situation that was negative and I turned it into a positive. And I think we can do that. I think we can take situations, we learn from our no's. That's what I said a few minutes ago. We learn more sometimes from our no's than we learn from our yeses. And we look at a situation and we say, okay, how can I look at this differently? How can I turn this around and turn this into a situation? For me, it was survival. I'm going through a really difficult divorce, and I just moved 10 days ago. So I'm in my new place.
So you have a lot going on, and
so a lot of
smile
changes and a lot of things going on in my life. And I said, okay, this is survival. What can I do to get by and survive this situation? And that's what I did.
It's great. Well, first
I'm gonna say the same thing, Jim. Great story, Loretta. Inspiring.
Thank you. Congratulations.
You go, Sesame Bagel. All right.
Sesame Bagel. And what I love about that, and I talk about this with clients as well, because you can pivot, you can change direction, but you actually, that no got you to utilize that teaching background, right, in tutoring. And now you're combining that in a need and you're marketing yourself. So you're able to combine, you know, get to the intersection of that teaching and marketing and making an impact, which is really cool. So that your story now is evolving, which is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
great.
you.
So see how entered, you know, when you think about the stories you have. David, did you want to share that? Did you put that in a private message?
Yeah, it's pretty scary because it repeats itself more than
why don't you share with everyone what you're talking about? I read
absolutely.
that.
I found a position that looked like it was tailor-made for me. It was in an industry that I had a lot of experience. It was a position that I had a lot of experience. And they said, hey, let's interview you. So I had a 90-minute interview with Todd, this guy, and he said, wow, you're our top 2 candidates. And I go, I want you to do this. There's a lot of questions about how to improve the organization. And they said, we actually make the decision using a panel. And we have
Okay.
this test that we actually let you prepare, which gives you a list of scenarios of business challenges. We want to see how you want to address those.
Mm-hmm.
So the test is 2 hours. So I go through this thing and I take a look at each one of the scenarios offline and submit it. And these are great ideas that I mean, I've worked with over 200 companies in my life, and I had all these great things going into their organization, and they get back to me and goes, we're not going to, we've gone in another direction. And then I have somebody else that I know that works there that called me recently and said, we've implemented almost every single one of your ideas to change your organization. And I just wanted you to know that. And this has happened to me at least 3 times that I'm aware of, that I've gone out and to promote myself, I do research on the company, find out what I can do to help them. They use those ideas and not bring me in. So I don't tell them anything anymore about how I can help the organization, but that's not going to help me get the job.
That's
So
not going to help you either. So it's something in between, right? It's
yeah.
Right. So how does that feel though for you? That went under a challenge, then a positive experience, even
It's a
though you were
burn.
having a great conversation apparently, or
It's a burn. Yeah, I actually had one of the experiences. I went out and actually showed up for the first day, and we started talking. They said, let's fill out the forms to get going. And they said, let's talk about what we're going to do going forward. And then they said, no, we're not going to hire you. I'm like, this is my first day. But thanks for all the ideas in our first marketing meeting. That was the first thing at 8:00 was a bunch of ideas. I'm like, fuck. I go, you got to pay me for at least today. So
what is it then you're learning from those experiences?
I just have to, good question. Just, I'm trying to promote myself with what I know. And so I'm actually building a library of trying to provide that service as a consulting fee, as opposed to getting in full time.
So did you get any feedback, or had you have follow up with any of those companies, and did they share anything with you?
Well, not the hiring people, but I
Or the
do have
recruiters or
contacts at the
anything?
lower levels that have told me that they've done some of the things I've recommended. And one of the persons called me last week and said, I want to work for me. They want to work for me as opposed to where they work there, because I would have been a perfect person in that organization. And I still think I would have been, but.
Look, and we don't always, and just to be fair, we don't always have all the information. If it was an internal hire and somebody got promoted, or somebody else had similar ideas, or whatever it was, we really don't know. So let's not go down that rabbit hole, because it won't take us anywhere.
Right. Well, two of the positions I know, they don't have a person in that spot.
Okay.
So maybe it was just a way of getting solutions without actually having to pay for them.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what their intentions were. But so let me ask you this, because I will tell you, and people do share ideas and thoughts and their thought processes, especially when there's like tech and digital, because you do need to explain, if you're coding. And I've sat there in those interviews with the CTOs or CIOs when they're interviewing people, and it's, can you take me through like what you would do in this scenario? How would you handle this situation? If it's QA or anything like that. And they really do need to understand the thought process, or what ideas you have to resolve those issues, to understand if you even get it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So is what you shared something that was proprietary that somebody else would never have thought of, that, you know what I mean? And if you're out there sharing, are you becoming a voice, an expert, a thought leader, somebody maybe you follow up and say, hey, I see the position's not open. Would you consider consulting? Maybe their budgets, because of what's going on, got shut down in the process.
Could be.
And you mentioned you realize you have this wealth of stuff that you could be consulting. The other question is, when you're doing that, how much are you comfortable sharing, and is it so what? Right?
Yeah.
David, just to let you know, it's amazing. I'm monitoring this chat box, and there are several people who have had very similar situations as what you just told us in your story. So I would reach out to them and comment and share, because they all had the same experience. So what to do, what not to do, how they handled it might be beneficial for you. And just talking is not that misery loves company. I don't want you to think it that way, but you might get ideas to incorporate into your next interview, how to go about implementing something different to get the result you're looking for.
Yeah, and figure out a way to do top line, say, here's some ideas I have. Perhaps you went like so deep, unless that's what was required. And then again, maybe there's NDAs or confidentiality if you're really sharing like process and all of that, and or it's just discussed up front. But you also don't want to be the person who's like, well, I'm not going to tell you my ideas, because then I don't know how you work.
Well, actually,
So there's some middle ground.
what I disclose are generally not complicated things. They're just, I've been at, and when I was back a long time ago, I was with, say, 200 companies, looking at how they run their organizations. A lot of these companies, they have people that work there that have only worked at 1 or 2 companies in their entire life. So it's just like, to me, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
And for one example, I was sitting there one day and the phone was ringing nonstop. And I said, why is the phone not ringing? Well, we can't hire enough people to answer the phone, so we just let it ring.
Right.
And I said, well, why don't we build an online portal and we get the web designers to do that? In a week, we had that, and the phone stopped ringing. And they didn't even think, why don't we do that online? So that's not earth shattering. It's not creative. It's just, they didn't think that way. So those are some of the simple things.
Yes. And again, so what I'm hearing is you're able to, one of your superpowers is you're able to walk in and assess the situation and immediately come up with some ideas and help them to bridge their solutions. You can identify their needs. That's who you are. That should be part of your story. So if this taught you the experience taught you anything, it's probably pivoting you for a reason that you don't see yet. And that's okay. But you are this, kind of MacGyver of that, what you do, and make that part of your story, and look, in coaching, I will have a discovery session. And some people are like, oh, don't sit there and coach them in the session. I'm like, well, then how are they going to know what it's like to work with me? I'm absolutely happy to say, okay, give me the biggest thing. Give me a situation you're dealing with right now. What's holding you back? And we coach them through it. So they go, this is what it's going to be like working with me. If they want to work with me, great, they'll call. If they don't, or they can't right now, or all the other reasons, fine. If you give them an idea of what it's like to work for you and how you are that MacGyver of taking all these different situations and streamlining or coming up with creative solutions, figure out a way to talk about that. Because it's your thing. It's helping you define your story. And for some reason, it's pivoting you in another direction. You just don't know what that is yet. But we'll talk about that in energy. So should we keep going? Thank you for sharing that. There's not going to be the answer that's going to totally make you feel good about that 100%. But how do you look at it, and how do you take the information, and how does it help develop your story? How does it help develop work that you can do? Do you go back and ask them if they're interested in some consulting work in the meantime? If they haven't hired, they may have put the whole thing on hold in the middle of it. And so it does look like what it does to you from the outside. Totally understandable, right? But you also found your superpower. Now, is that, and is that on your LinkedIn profile? Is that at the top of your resume? That this is the specialty of what you do for organizations. You can help, assess and identify and create, ideal solutions. Like that may be what this is all about. It's helping you refine your story, refine your specialty.
Good point.
Okay. So that's what we do when we're coaching in transition and really helping to get to our story. Okay, so thank you for all of those. I appreciate them, because I know we all could have so many different situations and scenarios, and they do get frustrating. This process can be frustrating. So it's how do we keep our energy up? Okay, so 1 second. Where did I go? So hold on, did I just go out of order? 1 second. Okay. So when we talk about the different energy levels, and I'll go back to my little stop sign in a minute, sorry. When we talk about the different energy levels, the lower levels are where you have those blinders, right? Because that's where the biggest energy is, the most judgment we have about what's going on or what's happening, and it can really shut us down. And the more we release that judgment, the more we start to lean into our strength and our energy as we go up the scale. And like I said, it can fluctuate throughout the day. It can fluctuate through an interaction with somebody. But what we're really looking for is, how do we go from being reactive, like knee-jerk reactions to things that happen, to responding, to choosing to pause for just a moment. So the power of the pause, to just pause and choose how we want to respond in that situation. Now, it doesn't mean we don't get triggered and we don't get angry. I'm not saying never feel those again. You absolutely will have these different feelings and emotions, and you should experience all of them. Sometimes they're there to protect us. Sometimes they're there to make us stop. What we want to be cautious and careful of is, how long do we stay there? And that's the choice you're going to have to make going forward. So let's talk about the different levels. Level 1, we'll start from the bottom, and we use the I lose, I win, so to understand what they really mean and stand for without trying to label them, but to help for an understanding. So level 1 is the concept of I lose. And the thoughts that go into that are, I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, I'll never get this job, they'll never select me. All this fear and doubt and insecurity and worry and self-blame are those emotions and feelings. So if that's how we're feeling, how are we going to be able to show up, right? So someone at level 1, and this chart is on the back of the handout, if you have the handout, just so you know. You're not going to necessarily be very engaged. You may feel stuck, may not feel like you have a lot of choices. You may not communicate really well. You may get held back, and you just get caught in that cycle of fear, which you're not going to be able to perform at your best. So we want to be careful of level 1 and how long we stay there. Now, could you have worked really hard and gone through a great interview process and thought you were doing great and got all the way to the end, and it was like a week and a half of interviews, and then you didn't get that job and you thought it was perfect, and you go home and you're like on the floor with a pint of ice cream, or on the couch with a pint of ice cream? Look, it's okay to go through the different emotions and try to think it through and what happened and what's going on. How long do you stay there? Does it end up shutting you down that we can't even have that conversation like we just did with David and go through, like, so what did we learn from that? Was it really the right organization? Are there other opportunities that came from that? Are there different things we're learning? But when you're in level 1, you can't even hear that because you have blinders on. This is about as far as you can see. As we go up the levels, you start to be able to see more opportunities. Okay. Level 2 is, I win, but you're going to lose. And that's, now you're fighting. So you're out of your head and now you're fighting. You get angry, you're resistant. And that's not going to get you very far either. I want to prove myself. I'm going to beat out the others. How does that sound like it would show up in an interview? Right? That's going to be a little concerning. It can be disruptive or combative, and you want to be really careful with that. So what we talk about then is, if you find yourself reacting in a level 1 or 2 way, which is normal, and that's okay. It's part of our process. We're not going to say don't ever feel like that. But when you do, now you're going to know about it because it's a trigger and you're going to feel it. You will have emotional feelings. You will feel it in your body. You'll either get a headache or tense shoulders or feel it right in your chest. We know how that feels when we're getting anxious or tense. So you want to really just pause. And that's where, we want to figure out how to just stop, because you've been triggered by your blocks, and I'm telling you, they're holding you back and they're showing up in the interview. Even if you think you're hiding it, but underneath you're really angry. You're not. It will come out somehow. You will feel energy in a meeting. So you really want to try to reset yourself. So think about my little stop sign, my hand-drawn design of my stoplight. When you feel yourself triggered, and just stop. This is the power of the pause. Recognize that you've been triggered. And in yellow, you're going to reset. And at this point, you want to assess your energy, question the truth, question the reality of the situation. What are the facts, right? And how true is that? You want to create some new thoughts. And you really want to decide, how is this serving me the way I'm feeling right now? And how am I going to be able to act in this interview or in this networking situation if I feel like this? And what do I need to do to get out of that? You may need to just pause and take some deep breaths. You may need to go walk out of a room, get away from your computer, go work out, take a run, just take a walk and get some fresh air and clear your mind, right? So find the thing that's going to work for you. It may mean just get away from your desk, go make a cup of coffee or tea, put some music on, reset. What is going to be your reset? Maybe playing with the dog or your cats or the kids. What is going to help you reset to shift your mindset and calm you down? And then green, you're going to shift, create some new actions that go forward. You will feel the difference with new perceptions and thoughts that will increase your energy and your success. How does that sound for everyone? I know the chat's been going. What's going on over there?
I think when you actually put this into motion for yourself, instead of just listening to you and their words on a screen, you start to do the reset and you start to figure out, okay, I need to stop. I need to concentrate on something else so I can go back in a positive light and be able to move to green and shift. It actually does work, guys. But you need to put it into motion. You can't just listen. You actually have to take the action that's needed for you so that it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Find what works for you. Yes, Jim.
Can you talk about the shift again, please? How, just new actions going forward, how that works?
So it's once you recognize that you've been triggered and you just take the power in the pause, you take the deep breaths, that's in yellow. You're going to assess what's actually happening. Just take a few deep breaths and be like, okay, ask yourself, because that's what a coach would do, or someone else who's trying to say, hey, okay, what's actually happening here? What's true? What's a new way you could look at that? What's another thing that could be happening here? Some of the questions, like you may have heard me asking before, I was seeing, what's another way you could look at it? Like we did with Nina. What do you, if you were in that position, what else could it have meant? And then what you're defining in the shift is creating a new action forward, even if it's just a little bit, right? It may not be a full pivot, but it's enough to keep you from reacting, because now you're choosing, how do you want to respond to that situation? Does that make sense?
So the shift is like a positive change, like a new direction.
Create your new action forward. Okay. What is that? And it's going to be a choice to respond versus knee-jerk reaction.
Okay, good.
Right? Now you're in control. And all we've done in the stop reset is put you in control in the power of the pause. Make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, good. Great. Okay, so let's keep going, because we have so much to go through and we're flying through time. So now let's get through, and I'll take you through each of the other levels a little quicker, because we have some good work to do with that. But I really want you to just be aware of the catabolic energy and how it can hold you back, and when you get triggered by it, because now you know you are in control. This is your power to shift your energy. And look, it takes a lot. I know this stuff, and even I can get triggered with my kids, or a situation. And I don't just sit here and go, oh, let me reset. It's like, you know what, I'm going to be mad right now and I'm really angry, but at least I calm down enough to know what I'm doing, and I can be angry until I'm ready to work it out. But I don't stay there for weeks on it.
I agree, Amy.
I've just started to adjust my time in it.
Yep. Everyone is different, and everyone's staying in each section for a different amount of time.
Yeah.
We talk about the 5 stages of grief. You have to go through them, but how long you choose to stay in each section is really up to you. This is very similar. How long you choose to stay where your energy is being depleted, or the energy you're giving back to the universe in a positive light, is up to you.
And it really does, when energy starts to flow, it really does flow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But sometimes we're too blocked to even see it or take it in or give it. And that's all fair. But we learn from those experiences as well. Again, I can look back and be like, God, I was so mad. And oh my God, I couldn't even figure that out. And there it was sitting in front of me and I couldn't even see it.
Yeah.
You know, 3 years later I can, but
Yeah.
hopefully we can learn from that a little earlier when we actually start to realize everything's an experience, even if it's a challenging one, or somebody who's standing in front of you is there for a reason. You know, and everyone's our teacher and our student. Interesting. These are all IPEC foundation principles. They go deep. You know, even if you think it's someone, if we feel we're older in the workforce, because that would be me too. But with stuff I learned from the younger generation that I coach, I love mentoring and I get so much more out of it than I think they do, even though I know they get a lot, because I get such an insight into their world and how they're showing up, how they're becoming these emerging leaders and new managers. It's really fascinating. Right. But I'm open to that. So it's interesting. I don't get threatened by that. I think it's really cool. So
that's one of the things that I love about you, Amy, and all of our guest speakers that we have had here. I do a lot of networking events and participate in them and just listen to other speakers. And if you can get a tidbit or two to incorporate into your life and your job search, then it was worth your time. And you've already given us more than, me, and more than 2 tidbits that I can say, hey, you know what, I need to do this, or yeah, I can do that, or that's a great term for this. And so good for you. Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate it.
No,
Keep
you're
going.
welcome. I love all this. I can do this stuff all day. I love energy leadership. So let's get to level 3. Level 3 sounds like I win. And guess what? If you win too, that's great. And so that's that bridge between getting into the anabolic and positive energy. And it just has a little bit of catabolic left. It is the bridge. So there's that rationalizing and coping. You do accept responsibility, but there's a little bit of that coping. So careful where we can compromise. It can work for us, right? We may compromise on a role or an interview or a networking opportunity, but careful of it, that it doesn't become something we move forward with, but we never really resolved an issue that we had. So careful if you accept a role that maybe challenges one of your, oh my gosh, what did I call it earlier? One of your, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I just lost it. What did I call that earlier? Oh, forget it. I lost it. Just be careful. Be careful if your deal breakers. I'm sorry. I'm like, where is that word? See, yeah, thank you, Jim. My deal breakers. Careful if you go against one of your deal breakers. And I did work with somebody who was getting a huge job with a big company, and she was really excited about it, but she was going to have to commute from Upper West Side in Manhattan up, into Westchester. She was going to have to get a car and all these other things she didn't have. And she was fine with that. But there was one thing, it was going to be a deal breaker for her, because she was not going to be able to, in the commute and the whole thing, be involved with her kids at the age they were in the evening the way she wanted to. And she always told me, I'll never, ever, that's my one deal breaker. And she went against it for the contract. And 6 months later, she couldn't get out of the contract fast enough. Right. So it just was there. It was like a little thorn in her side. So she justified it. She tolerated it. It was exciting on so many levels, but there was something still there that just wasn't in line, and she was out of alignment, and it just wasn't working for her. So make sure you pause and assess that. At level 4 now, it's about the other person. The other person wins. So there's a lot of gratitude and compassion and service to others there. And that could be like, I'm grateful for the opportunity to work here. How can I help you with this project? I want to support you. I want you to do well. Hey, here's a job I saw that I just thought of you. It may be great for you, and with no strings attached. Right? That's what that's all about. And look, at level 4, you can find a lot of, nurses and teachers and people in service to others as well, really doing and helping. And remember, there's also advantages and disadvantages to all the levels. At level 4, be careful if you give so much, but you don't take care of yourself. because you will, especially in the interview process, right? You're trying to manage so many things, and you have family or responsibilities or whatever that is, plus the interview process, which is overwhelming on its own, but you feel you're giving because you need to do all these things and these responsibilities, but you aren't taking care of yourself. So self-care is really important, because then you'll have the good level 4 energy, but you'll drop to 1 and 2 because you're exhausted. And then you may get mad, right? Or you'll just shut down, and then you're not really showing up, or you're not preparing enough for those interviews. It'll just wear on you. So be very careful. There's a balance. Okay. Now at level 5, this is we both win. You feel confident. Here's where you can see opportunities. There's calm at this level, and confidence is really here. This is about, I'll trust the process. Whatever happens, I'll learn something from it. And I know there's opportunities in everything that we're doing. So how would that show up when you're on an interview? Who thinks they want to share that with me? Where you're experiencing the interview for the interview, right? When you're actually just giving and sharing information, and whatever comes from the interview, if this is the place for me to be, this is where I'll be. How does that feel? I know it's a tough one. David's like, not buying that one.
I was actually in one interview where the guy said, I think you're more qualified than my job than he was. So obviously we're not hiring you. So it's like,
And that happens. Look, that does happen. So that's okay. But then where do you look in the type of roles you're looking for then, or the size of companies? Perhaps, perhaps the value you add is at startups or somebody that's scaling. It may be something like that. What are the different opportunities there?
David, I think that
Taking that one in.
people are looking for a certain type of position, and they keep hearing that from an interviewer's perspective, that maybe you need to give yourself a little bit more credit and step it up to look for those different roles. That's something that you could learn that would be positive and obviously make you more money, depending on what you are going for or what you are looking for. You could take that as a learning experience. Okay, well, I keep hearing this same response. Maybe I need to step it up, as opposed to look for middle management, maybe senior management or C level or whatever it happens to be.
I've been on all ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I have,
and it's finding your sweet spot.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
right. So I have 3 startups that I'm working with. Of course, they want me to work. They don't have any money. So of course they want me to help them out. And then on the largest scale, I was working for a $6 billion company for 20 years. And they wanted to bring me in at a C level and years ago, but then they went through some kind of merger. And so that never happened. So
I think level 5, like Amy said, we're both winning. You can't say yes all the time, because you're going to drop to that level 2, level 1. So you need to be strategic about what you are doing so that you're both benefiting from that situation, as opposed to giving everything and saying yes to everyone and not taking care of yourself. So you don't drop.
There's a lot. This is deep. This stuff's, I'm giving you high level. So let it sink in. Figure out when you're in a moment now. I would say going forward, when you're preparing for your next networking situation or interview, think about how you're feeling, like what's coming up for you. And when you're in the meeting with the different type of people you're meeting, how are you feeling? How do you think you're showing up? How do you get into the blue areas to make sure you're showing up at your best? And then what are you recognizing on the other side of how they may be showing up, or how engaged they are? Just start there. The rest will fall. It will start to fall into place when you start looking at the world just a little differently, right? What are we accepting in? What are we learning from different things, right? Eventually, you're going to find that connection in that place that really fits perfectly for you. Okay. Now let's go through the next 2 levels, because then we're going to talk about connecting this, getting into our story. So at level 6 and 7, so at these levels, this is about how we're being present. At levels 1 to 5, it's how we're doing things. At level 6 and 7, This is level 6, we always win. It's just fearlessness is there. Your intuition is here. And we really tap into these different levels. And so follow your intuition. The more you're open, the less you have judgment and you're judging things. And the more you're open to like, okay, what is supposed to be happening here? What am I seeing? What could the possibilities be? And then how am I feeling, right? What is intuition telling me right now? And start to listen to that a little bit more. Because that's really somewhere that if you're it's oneness, it's calm, there's joy at this level, and all that fearlessness and strength comes from there. And then at level 7, it's winning and losing basically are illusions because we've labeled them. So there is absolute passion. That's where harmony, oneness, there's no judgment at all. And this is where pioneers who can create something from nothing, this is where genius lies. But if you utilize all of these or some pieces of them and just see where you get caught getting, catching down in negative energy, what would change if you just paused and chose how to respond versus react? So what would really change in the way you're showing up for interviews, the way you're showing up in networking, the way you're seeing opportunities? This is something to think about. Any more questions on the energy? Are we ready to get to building our confidence now that we see where we can play around with different energy levels? We good? Okay, so let's talk about confidence. Here's where we were just talking before, identifying your strengths, but really talking about them. We're going to get into them in a second, developing your story. And I think self-care and being prepared is a very big part of your confidence and how you show up. But let's start with strengths, okay? So you will hear me no matter who I'm talking to, whether it's college students or my executives, when we talk about explain to me what your strengths are. Again, this is the same conversation I go through with my clients at all different levels. And then sales are like, well, I like people. I'm like, yeah, that's not the answer, right? Or they're an analyst. I'm like, oh, I'm good with numbers. I'm like, yeah, that's not the answer either. So if they're a designer, I'm creative. Well, I hope so. Isn't that kind of the definition of designing? And a project manager, I'm organized. Okay, I've learned nothing about them, right? So what's really important is to go deep into your strengths. So what I want to know from somebody in sales is a little bit about maybe their approach, why they think they're so strong at it. So here are just some examples. Instead of saying, oh, I like people, how about I enjoy building business partnerships with my prospects and clients by first identifying their needs, understanding their biggest challenges, and then creating solutions for them. And here's an example of how I've done that. Now I'm interested, right? Now I know you understand the business, you understand what's important, or at least I know for you, consultative selling is key. And you understand what that means because you identify their needs first. I have literally had people when I was in sales tell me, just come in and start selling me the product. And I'm like, well, that's okay. And I'm glad sports is important, but actually my target's women who do this and aren't interested in sports. And so they were selling themselves out of this situation. When I look at the numbers person, I had a situation where someone was like, Amy, I'm great. I know I'm like real smart, mathematical whiz, like, but I don't like know how to tell my story. I don't know how to explain that. And so we did a strengths assessment, which I'll give you some examples of those. And she found the language in that she was able to then utilize and transfer. So being able to say, look, I take a 360 view of the data provided and identify patterns to assess immediate needs, opportunities, and risks of the business as I develop recommendations and solutions. Here's an example of how I did that. For being creative, I use my creative lens and experience to develop a brand's image to ensure it connects with their core audience. Here's an example how I did it for this product. Okay. For project management, really talking about how you understand, what it's like to manage a complex project. So I'm adept at taking a complex situation involving many factors, people and personalities, right? You can say that, and aligning them to run a productive project to completion. Here's an example of that. So really think about when, you know, people are talking about, oh, my strengths, oh, you know, how do you explain them? Be really clear about them. And here's a way, if you haven't had to talk about them, that you can find some help. Now, I did put which are free, which are paid, and all of that. Clifton Strength Finders does your top 5 strengths. It's like $19.99 or something like that. High 5 strengths I did the other day to see what that was about, because I've heard a lot about it. That gives you the top 5 strengths, and it gives you a partial information for free. And then to get the rest of the big report, they do have a small fee for that as well. And then of course they have their bigger all 20, and they put them in this whole report and what it means. VIA, the VIA strengths, that's free, and they give you all 24. I put the word values next to them because I found they were more values, like honesty. And, you know, there was something about it that was more values driven than what I got out of the strengths. But that has value also. It's just, what is it you're looking for, right? And then I found one for fun, and I started doing it yesterday, but I ended up getting a client call and I had to stop it. And it's so different. It's free. It's the Red Bulls, like, you know, Red Bull that you drink. It's called Wing Finder, and it was really, I believe, for high performance and performance athletes and things like that. But I found it just kind of fascinating, and the whole assessment was something like I've never seen before. Different creative ways they ask questions, even mathematical kind of what number sequence, all these different kind of things. And I never got to the end to get to the report, but I did want to just give you some other free options. So it could be interesting depending on what you need. All of the people I work with when it comes to transition or interviewing, I do have them do a top 5 strengths. The reports that you get out of Strength Finders really gives a lot of great information. The report out of High 5, even the free version, gave a lot of great information. And then for the people who just don't know how to talk about it, like my one client who is this mathematician and didn't know how to do the story part, it was so helpful. She's like, oh my God, that's me. That explains it. I'm like, well, yes, that's you. You answered the questions. But for her, she really was able to get the language she needed. And she did so great in an interview from it. And so it really built her confidence. So here's just some tools that you can think about. And it is kind of fun to go through it and see what you can pick out and start to utilize in your story or update your resume with it or LinkedIn. Okay. So now let's go to your story. Here's the other thing I go through with my clients, kind of like what we were just doing before when I was asking lots of questions. And there's the piece on strength. Sorry, I'm moving all the pictures around on my screen. And this is on the handout as well as one of the sheets on the handout with these 4 boxes. And again, these are high level what I do with clients. First, I really just want to know, what are you passionate about doing? So I would ask you to list the top 5 things you enjoy the most from your career or from the field that you're in. And then likewise, list the parts of your job you least enjoyed, because you'll find a lot of interesting things come out of that, especially if you've just left a place, a company that you've been with for a long time. You may want to make that list longer. But what did you enjoy the most? And when you're looking for jobs now, are you focusing on that, or are you looking at something different? Because you may find some gold nuggets in there that you may want to focus on. And are those things that you enjoy the most highlighted on your resume? Okay, just another way to, that's what I would look at first. I want to hear the story. I do want to know everything that you've done. And then I want to see if I'm hearing that and seeing that in your resume and in your LinkedIn profile. Because I often find holes or pieces missing when they actually just start to talk about it and we're not looking at the resume, just telling me the story. Right, Nina? Like, we found out something there that may be a little bit of a gold nugget for you and a way to present that because it has value, because of your depth of relationships. Whether you use them or not, you have them, right? And you have a network that's maybe really valuable. So back to, what are your strengths? List the top 5 you think your strengths are. And then write 2 detailed sentences about them, like what I just did on the prior page. Or get one of those strength assessments and see how else you can explain what you do and really get comfortable talking about it. Another thing I have people do is and I did it myself, ask 3 people that you worked with what they valued about your work or working with you. You may be surprised at the answers. You may not have even realized something that you're just really comfortable doing because it's what you do is something that you're like, well, just doesn't everybody do that? But it was your thing. It's what they actually valued about you and why they came to you. So
I think that is so important that you mentioned that, Amy, because when you start to ask people, they're like, oh, so you do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course I do, but they put it in a different language.
Yeah.
They use different words to say the exact same thing for them to understand what you were trying to say. So instead of you making it very complicated, they're like plain English and yeah, I can use that. And
yeah,
light bulbs go off.
and
It's
you
amazing.
should be, yeah, and it's, look, and you're not bragging. That's where people get
Yeah.
this, they get this thing with interviewing that, oh, I'm bragging about myself. I'm bragging about myself. I'm like, okay, it's an interview. I actually need to know all these things, right? So we're not at a bar hanging out like, hey, I'm this, that's not what we're talking about. It's an interview, and I need to know you had leadership roles, and I need to know you worked cross-functionally with the other parts of the organization, and you have that experience. Not just, well, doesn't everybody? It was an HR function. No, they don't necessarily. So we really need to understand the nuance. And when I asked, there was someone I work with who's a CIO, and the thing that's so cool and special about her, and you'll know this if you work with a lot of tech people and you're not a tech person, is when I would have some system that we obviously put in, customized too much, so who knows what it does. I'm like, I just need it to talk to my team like this and fill in this box, right? That's all I could explain it from. And she would just look at her guy, and they would talk like whatever Greek tech language they were talking that I didn't understand. And then she would look back at me and she would say it in something I completely understood that I could share with my team, right? Being able to have that flexibility, because there were also other people on her team that couldn't do that part. She just thought everybody does that, right? I understand the tech, or I understand the scientific side, but she had this nice ability to be able to just put it in a layman's terms that you could use. So how do you do that, right? That could be your specialty, and that may be really important for someone to be able to say in an interview, especially if it's a highly technical role or highly scientific role. And I did have a client who's a PhD, she's a scientist, but she's a communication person. But she gets straddled between the super scientific side and all that, and she can do it, and she's in it, but she needs to transition that information and translate it so customers can use it and understand it. So that was nowhere on her resume. It's now at the top how her specialty is at the intersection of the scientific data and understanding and, working with scientific data and translating it to, right, whatever that is for the customer use. That's her selling point. So think of those areas and how to use that language. Then what are your accomplishments? So different than what you're passionate about, but what did you accomplish? What's all the work you did at these companies that you were really, really proud of? And detail the specific contributions you did with that work. And from that list, what theme is most prominent for you? Because you may see something you maybe didn't see before. And when I did that, after I left corporate, I'm like, wow, oh my God, I was there 22 years, even though we had 7 different publishers, 4 different digital businesses we brought up and down, plus the print business. And there were so many things we did. I had to write this huge list. And then I started to put them in categories, and what came out for me was consistency with developing talent. Developing talent was really big for me. Management and leadership training was really big for me, and the coaching and advising. And it just became my theme throughout everything from the sales side to the HR side. And it's the part I loved. So think about what is it that's coming up? What's prominent for you? David, you had a lot of experience, right? And because of all the things you're sharing, and you just said, you had said earlier, you're putting them in this treasure box of information you have, but there's themes in there. You may find something in there that becomes the more prominent themes. Are those explained on your resume? Are those highlights on your resume or your LinkedIn profile. Okay. And then tell your story and identify what's missing. So I literally just have them tell me their story without looking at the resume. And I want to hear what they're excited about. I want to hear what's coming out. We go through all these different things. I double click. You'll hear me talk about double clicking a lot. That means I just ask more questions about that one thing. Double click more, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more, because there's always more. It's like peeling the layers. There's always more and something really cool in there. So find a partner from this group, a coach, an old colleague, you know, who knows your work, and share your story and see what comes up. Maybe record yourself telling the story and go back and listen to it, and then see what themes are coming up. And is it on your resume? Is it on your LinkedIn? Because if you're telling your mom knows you. You know, if you're telling your sister or your brother, they know you, right? But talk to somebody who doesn't. Find, like I said, you have a group here, connect with each other, share your stories. Because it's someone who doesn't really know you intimately, they're going to hear different things. They're going to hear it differently. They may ask, oh, tell me more about that. Well, how did you do that? Well, what else did you do on that project? Right? So that's where the depth's going to come in. So how does that feel so far? Good? All right, here's the next part. Self-care, right? It is the #1 priority. And yes, it's understandable how hard this is right now. But as we said before, if you're too busy taking care of everyone else and not taking care of yourself, you will run out of steam and energy. It's like a gas tank, right? You use those analogies of the gas tank, or when you're in an airplane, put your mask on first. If a gas tank, if you're on full, you're full speed ahead, you have tons of energy, you can go all day. If you're on empty, where are you going? And you don't want to show up empty when you're going to an interview. So mindset, all the things we've talked about, energy, keep that in mind. Okay. Meditating, if it helps, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, deep breathing. You could find that, I mean, there's so many apps now, Calm, anything that just slows the world down a little bit in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you can do a longer practice, that's great. It will make a huge difference. If you can just slow your breathing down, take 3 deep breaths, close your eyes without interruption, you can make a shift physiologically, right? So that's mindset. Exercise, find what works for you. Is it yoga? Is it going out for a run? Is it just getting out for a walk for fresh air, right? Find the thing that you love and burn some energy and just keep renewing. Nutrition, take care of yourself, eat well, especially before an interview. Make sure you just are feeling as best as you can. And we know sleep's important, so do your best to get as much as you can.
I think all of those are important. And everyone could pick and choose, but I had a friend who said, I can't go to that Zoom call at that time because I have an appointment with my treadmill. And she actually put it on her calendar that was her time that she's going to do XYZ. And if you're having a hard time taking care of yourself, then maybe that's what you need to do, is make time for mindfulness, make time on your calendar, your daily activities for that exercise or nutrition to make sure it's happening.
Yep. So this is about prioritizing you and knowing that, first of all, giving yourself permission that that's okay, even if it starts with 20 minutes, to do that for yourself, because that's a mindset block that we have, that I can't do that for me. I have so much responsibility. I have to take care of everyone else first. But again, how are you taking care of everyone else if you're on empty? You're actually more productive for them. So start with 20 minutes. Think of one thing about what we talked about here, whatever your specialty is, that you can do starting tomorrow, 20 minutes. And I love that, Christine. Block out time on your calendar. That's a big thing for this, whether it's the morning, middle of the day, even to just get up, and especially with Zoom. Sometimes instead of, in addition to lunch, stick 20 minutes at 3 o'clock or 3:30 to walk outside and get fresh air. Or they have the 7-minute workouts now. You can do anything to just jazz up and You know, they have apps for everything to just get your heart pumping and clear your mind. All right. So pick one thing that you want to think about that you can do and commit to. Does everyone have one? Put them in the chat. What's everyone going to commit to? Good. Yes, put your exercise on the calendar. That's fantastic. Every day. What else? Treadmill, meditation. Yep. Good. Thank you for sharing those. Yep. Non-job search accomplishments during the day. Yep. Self-care, good. Walking the dog, abs workout, sleep, maybe sleep. Look, once we can settle our mind a little bit, the sleep part will come, right? It's actually your mind is so active and it needs to calm down. We need to figure out a way to bring it down so it can rejuvenate overnight. And it is a balance, but the more you just are thoughtful and intentional about it, that's another word, is that we're choosing and we want to be intentional about what we're doing. Okay. So thank you for sharing those. Okay, so let's get to connection. So connection. Now you've developed your story. It's time to connect and pull all this together. So the 3 areas of connection I like to talk about is, how does your story connect to the role and the company? And the easiest thing to do is take that job description you saw posted, wherever you got that from, and put it down next to your resume and start going like this. You know? How am I connecting my experience to what they're asking for? And it doesn't have to be 100%. Okay? It does not have to be connected 100% for you to post for that job. But if you see that you have some strong qualities that align with the role, then identify what they are and have a piece, write out for yourself examples of how you do that. So you're starting to prepare yourself for the interview. Okay. And then connecting with the interviews. Like I said, remember, it's just a conversation. And we had a great example of how a conversation went really, really well when you were just being yourself. It's 2-way. Find a way to engage them. You may want to ask about their experience with the company, their career journey, talk about the role, but have questions prepared. Ask about the team, ask about expectations. What are the qualities maybe that they like that aren't on the team right now that would help round out the team? And see if that's something that you provide. Ask what success looks like there, but be prepared and ask questions. And if you've, I'm sorry, Nina, what's the question? Am I highlighting my resume, the job description, or both? Yeah, you're making connections between the 2. Okay, Nina? So what you want to do is, if their top 3, look at the top 5 things they're looking for and see where you have those in your resume. And then really think through examples you have that you can share and connect, because you're connecting the story. You're connecting yourself to the role. Look at the company, right? Look through the company website because you want to be prepared. And not just on the first couple pages, go deep. Find out what's important to them. Find out what they support. Find out what they're in the press, what's being talked about them, what new things are they working on. So you're just familiar. You may have questions about that, and you can say, hey, I saw this and I was reading about this. I saw that new press release. Can you tell me more about that? How would that be? And how would we be working on that? How would that be part of this team?
I think that's a great idea, Amy, is often we look at our resume and we just send it out or apply for a job without really making that connection to what is listed on the resume as opposed to what they're asking for in the job. Sometimes it's off the wall, like David has given us stories and they were kind of like, wow, they wanted me to do this, this, and this. But sometimes it's just those top 5 things, and are they on there? A great way is to utilize this network and the people that are on this call to make that connection, bounce some ideas off of them. Feel free to put your email address or your LinkedIn connection URL in the chat box, and they can connect with you, and you have that instant camaraderie, somebody that knows exactly what you're asking for, and you can help them and they can help you. That's a wonderful idea, Amy.
And that's a level 5 opportunity. It's a win-win for everyone, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. And think about that two-way conversation. One other thing is be you. When we talked about this, it came up earlier, trying to overthink what they want to hear in the interviews, you know, and changing your story, not changing it so much, but like you're ahead of yourself a little bit when you're really thinking, what do they want to hear? And I had a client and it was incredible. He came to me when he was being courted to become a professor in a creative arts space. And he was already an associate professor, but he got that job very easily without a major interview process because it was right out of the program he came from, and they loved him and took him on. And so he didn't really have this interviewing experience. And then he was starting to get these calls as he was further along in his career for a major role as a professor leading a new department, one in which they had wiped out the department from the top through the top few positions, and actually had somebody from like the English department or another department become the head of it. So they selected him because his resume package was incredible. And one of the things it included was his kind of theories and approach to how he approaches art students, the ones who are going on the art path, as well as the ones who aren't, but so what their experience would be. So they were so interested in that and wanted to hear more. He didn't lead with that. He led, and he actually got caught in his head because he realized it and he was telling me about it. He's like, well, I think they wanted to hear this. I'm like, well, why would we think they wanted to hear that when they just wiped out the department? I think they had picked and selected you because of the package you presented, and they wanted to hear, talk to me more about your approach. And so he caught himself, right? He realized that, and he really went back. He had on the next set of interviews, he completely focused on that. He was right in him. He was being himself. And that's really where it connected for him. But he almost got in his own way because he was trying to give them what he thought they wanted to hear. I'm like, well, first of all, now I go from my perspective, what I'm hearing is it's not even a head of creative anymore that's running the department. It's somebody in the English department. So I don't think they know exactly what they want. They're looking for people with really interesting experience. So share that with them, right? You all have really interesting experience. Find a way to share that. Now, the networking part of connecting, it's like right here. Talk to the people in this group, use LinkedIn, reach out to your colleagues. We're in a very unique situation. So many people are so willing to help or, you know, wherever they can. And people have been really fantastic about that. Reconnect in any industry organizations and associations. Just because we're virtual doesn't mean those meetings went away. There's still virtual conferences, and they do great meetups within them and networking within them. So much there. But make sure you're spending time, like make that part of once a week or a certain time of day or certain time during the week. Put that on your calendar and put network to help yourself really make time to do that. Okay. How is all this sounding? We did a lot. Sound good? Yep, all good stuff? Great. So as you're taking that in, let's talk about this. Your key takeaways. On the action sheet, which is on the handout as well, your moving forward piece. What's one of your biggest takeaways today? And how will you put that into action this week? Put those in the chat for me. What's your key takeaways? Thank you.
I love that. So many things to work on. I know it's supposed to be simple, but yet you're overwhelmed, right? Where do we
No,
start?
don't get overwhelmed. Pick one or two that you focus on this week and then see how that takes you into the next thing. Who will you partner with to build and refine your story? You got a great network here. Yep. Yes, it's okay to be all over the place on the spectrum. Use your energy. Yep. Check out the strength site. Oh my God, it's so great in helping you really language because it's your answers, but it just helps explain it. They have paragraphs of information about that strength that you have, and it'll help you connect some dots. And that's what this is all about. How do you connect dots?
I don't know if anyone else has done them, but I have, just to see what it said. And oh my goodness, I agree. It is so enlightening. Just new words that you didn't even know existed for exactly what you do. So
Yeah.
Amy's got it. You should
Yeah.
definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's great. And that one self-care area you'll focus on this week. So I want you guys to have good takeaways. Don't overthink the situation. Don't try to figure out what the interview is looking for. Yeah, be you. Be you. And Nina, yep, you're going to partner with a coach. Excellent. I know one or some. And I do. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. And if it's not me that connects for you, I have a whole network. So happy to do that. Courage. I love that. More exercise routine, acceptance. Great. You do have many superpowers. You all do. Yes, Loretta, absolutely. Great. And one just reminder of what we talked about is just in reflection, you choose your energy and how you show up. Right? So each moment describes who you are and gives you that opportunity to describe if that's who you want to be. So we have time. Thank you all so much. Here's my contact information. Find me on LinkedIn, reach out if I can support you in any way or if you're interested in coaching, but absolutely stay connected. Any questions? Q&A time, Christine. Thank you all.
We had so many positive comments. I think everyone's got a huge list of things to do and not what I do.
That's okay. It's all good
Awesome.
stuff because I know the interviews now and the power of your conversations and the quality of your conversations are going to be so good. And how funny when you actually are going to start to see like the energy of your interviewers.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
It's enlightening for you as well as other people.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be able to work a room better too when you're networking.
Oh yeah. I'm excited for all of you. And you have what incredible resources that, like Christine, I see the job postings that you send all the time and all the amazing speakers. So you have such great resources. You can always gain something from those.
Absolutely. We are trying.
Okay.
So as I said earlier, this session was recorded, so it will be posted and the URL link will be shared with you 24 to 48 hours, depending on how long Zoom gets it. And the PDF that Amy was referring to throughout the presentation, if you didn't receive it yesterday to your personal email, it will be posted with a YouTube video as well, along with the chat box if you'd like to refer back to that or see somebody's contact information, that will be there posted as well. So there'll be the video and then the 2 attachments. And if you would like Amy's contact information, remember, press the print screen button at the top of your keyboard and it's in your mouse. So just hit your Word blank document and right click and you can copy and paste, it'll be right there. So thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate it. You gave so many words of wisdom and things to think about. I appreciate that.
Oh, I enjoyed being here. I'm excited for all of you, and you all do have an amazing story. Make sure it's really highlighted out there and it's on your LinkedIn, and you'll be amazing. And it'll all happen. It'll all connect. It'll happen. Thank
We
you.
hope so, right? I never
Yeah.
want to see you people again. No.
Oh.
I'm kidding. All right. Well, you have a great afternoon. Enjoy the sun. Hopefully we'll get some steps in and you'll get some exercise in this afternoon at least. And we'll see you again soon.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Great job.
Bye,
Bye,
Great
everyone.
job.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks
Bye.
for sharing, everyone. Good luck.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.